welcome back to Home Groups. Boy, glad to have you back. Summer's over, the fall's here, and excited to have you back at Bethel Home Groups. We're doing a study right now called In the Steps of Jesus. We're walking through the book of Mark, and we're learning from Jesus as we observe what he did and what he said in Scripture. Tonight, we're going to be in Mark chapter 10. In Mark chapter 10, verse 32, Jesus is going to reveal a significant piece of God's divine plan to the disciples. Jesus is going to put the disciples on the inside track of his purpose on earth, and he's going to share something very significant to him about the salvation of man. Verse 32, it says this: they were on their way up to Jerusalem, with Jesus leading the way. The disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and he told them what was going to happen to him. We are going up to Jerusalem, he said, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death, and they will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him, and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise. This is one of those moments where you see Jesus sharing significance in a vulnerable way to his team. Their response is disappointing. It says this: then James and John, sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left in glory. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit on my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus said, I'm going to die. And 2 of the disciples begin to jockey for position. Jesus says, I'll be mocked. I'm going to be flogged. I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be betrayed. And James and John are concerned about recognition and their seats of honor. In verse 41, when the other 10 hear about it, they become angry. And now the 12 are arguing. All the while, Jesus has just shared what he's concerned about and his death. He's still the only one concerned. He's carrying a load all by himself. In verse 46, the team is probably still fuming about the encounter, and they run into a man named Bartimaeus, and he's calling to Jesus. And as he calls to Jesus, the crowd rebukes him and tells him to be quiet. But Bartimaeus yells all the louder. Jesus stops. He calls the blind man. Bartimaeus takes his coat and he throws it to the side, and he comes to Jesus. And now it's quiet. Jesus is standing face to face with a blind man. The crowd who tried to quiet him is now still and watching. The disciples who were arguing about position are now watching and listening. Jesus breaks this incredible silence by saying an amazing thing. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. Mark 10:51. What do you want me to do for you? A blank check. Permission to ask, an opportunity limited only by the man's faith. My sight, that's what I want. And he was healed. What do you want me to do for you? The same question that Jesus asked the disciples, and they received a lesson. The blind man receives exactly what he requested. Why did one receive and one not? Of course, God is sovereign. And you can't force him into a box to do your will. He'll act as he chooses. But there's something here that we can learn about us coming to Jesus with a request. What was the difference? Why such a dramatic difference in the response to the exact same question? The problem here is simple. The disciples were living Christianity with the goal of receiving. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motive, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures, James 4:3. They made a classic mistake. They worried more about their outward appearance, their image, and what they could get instead of worrying about their inward heart and motivation and bringing a request to Jesus. The difference is seen in verse 50 when it says that Bartimaeus threw his cloak to the side. Bartimaeus, the act of unloading something that was valuable to him, he saw now as something that would just slow his progress in getting to Jesus. The disciples had the wrong motive. They requested something selfishly. The same selfishness that was demonstrated in not caring about the death of Jesus, the same selfishness that made them request seats of honor, is the same selfishness that withheld them from getting what they requested from Jesus. Jesus is here tonight, ready to repeat this same type of a thing. It's going to take effort. It's going to mean you're going to break from the crowd. It's going to mean you're going to have to get rid of obstacles that you consider valuable and then tell Jesus what it is that you want. The result of this story is that blind Bartimaeus, who now can see, got up and he followed Jesus. Where are you at tonight in this story? Where are you at tonight with your request with Jesus? Are you standing in the crowd? Has the crowd intimidated you to the point that you're just being quiet and you're not intimidated anymore? My friend, anytime you get something from God, you have to make a break from the crowd to get something valuable from God. Anytime you're going to get something valuable from God, you've got to empty your own hands of what it is that you deem as valuable. Those things have to be get put to the side. Why? So that your hands can be empty and you can be in a receiving position. What a great practice to start your days as a Christian with a palms down philosophy so that the things that you deem valuable can be dropped so that you can receive what you need from Jesus. Bartimaeus walks down the road, following Jesus, able to see, and the cloak is in the dirt. It's laying in the ditch. The disciples, with question marks, pondered this thing as they walk down the road following Jesus and Bartimaeus, who undoubtedly are having a great conversation. And they're wondering why the blind beggar received what he asked for, and they received a lesson instead of what they asked for. Motivation. Our heart, when we come to God and we ask him. The heart of Jesus is obvious in this story. What would you have me do for you? Make sure that the motive that you bring is pure. After that, the request that you bring is no big deal. God bless you as you go to discussion in your home groups.